Welcome to Tidbits from the Acts of the Apostles. The Apostle Paul has left Jerusalem. He will never return. He is now stationed in Caesarea Maritima along the coastline in the administrative center of the Roman government in Judea. There he will stay for a couple of years, waiting for his fate to be decided by the Roman authorities. The first incident in chapter 24 is the court for the procurator Felix. Now, an advocate, it's called a rhetor in Greek, Tertullus, arrives with some of the Jews from the Sanhedrin, to bring the accusations. Now, the court case that is described is somewhat of a farce. Felix very quickly discovers that. Now, the advocate for the Jews, Tertullus, he really is not a necessarily trustworthy person, and even Felix must have seen through his flattery, hear what he is saying to the Roman administrator. Since through we enjoy much peace, and since by your foresight, most excellent Felix, reforms are being made for this nation. In every way and everywhere we accept this with all gratitude. Now the fact is that Felix was incredibly unpopular, regarded as brutal, and that the Jews, the Sanhedrin included, actually opposed him in many ways. So this is sheer nonsense. Now, that is not all. Tertullus, remarkable, is unable to bring any actual witness in court. His closing remark is ironic. By examining him yourself, he appeals to Felix, you will be able to find out from him, that is Paul, about everything of which we accuse him. So he actually appeals to Felix to get Paul himself to incriminate himself. That could of course be done if interrogation was done by torture, but as Paul, which they well knew, was a Roman citizen, that was not allowed. Paul's reply is polite, and he also speaks to the best in Felix by saying in verse 10, knowing that you for many years have been a judge over this nation, I tearfully make my defense. This is the English Standard Version. Paul's speech here is a chiasm. He begins by a response to the accusations. Then he has a declaration of his innocence in verse 13. Then he has a kind of concession in the middle, and we'll read that in a moment, and then another declaration of innocence, and he finishes with a response to the accusation with the very clever remark, some Jews from Asia, they ought to be here before you and to make an accusation. Clearly, he has realized that there are no witnesses, and they should be brought, but there is a reason that they can't be brought, because the case is bogus, it's fake. Paul's concession in the middle is a concession, yes, but notice what it actually is. It's also a confession. Verse 14, but this I confess to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, I worship the God of our fathers, believing everything laid down by the law and written in the prophets, having a hope in God, which these men themselves accept, that there will be a resurrection of both the just and the unjust. The point from the legal perspective of this concession is that this has nothing to do with Roman law. There's no crime committed. This is only a matter of interpretation within the Jewish religion. And in that case, the case itself should be dismissed. Now it is not dismissed, and you may wonder why not. And the point is, of course, as stated in the end of the chapter, Felix wanted to do the Jews in favor in the hope that they would pay him some favors, some goodwill, which from a political point he certainly would need. So something interesting happens. Felix keeps Paul in prison. It's a friendly prison. His friends are allowed to visit him and take care of him. But he's still a prisoner. And then Felix's wife, Drusilla, who is a Jew, has got some interest in Paul, and she is visiting him fairly often. Felix is the same. The main preaching by Paul to the couple we find in verse 25. He reasoned about righteousness and self-control and the coming judgment. To that Felix was alarmed. So these three major themes of Paul's preaching we have found somewhere else. The themes of righteousness and the coming justice we have met already in the speech to the Athenians on Areopagus. We find both of these as central themes in Paul's epistles to the Romans. But what is this self-control, or as some translations have had it, temperance? In Greek, enkrateia. Paul speaks about that also in Galatians 5. This is the last element of the fruit or harvest of the Spirit. In Galatians 5, 22 and 23. He also speaks about it when he addresses the Corinthians, and he compares himself to an athlete, a runner, employing self-control, enkrateia. What has that to do with the coming judgment? An interesting observation. When it comes to general health, we all know that the effects of unhealthy living is something we harvest already now. We know that we can destroy our lives, so there is a clear cause and effect. And Paul is actually hinting that in the moral life, in ethics, there is a similar cause and effect, though it cannot be seen necessarily in this world where evil may prevail. There will be a judgment by God. And Felix is alarmed, it says. How could that be? Now, of course, his life was not the most amazing when it comes to moral heights. Let's speak about Drusilla, his wife. Actually, Felix had been married to another Drusilla. He had married her because of a recommendation by the emperor. But nevertheless, he met a 16-year-old girl, Drusilla, who was married to the king of Emesa. This Drusilla, his present wife, was extremely beautiful, and he simply fell for her and wanted her, and he got her. He divorced his first Drusilla, and he was married then to this Drusilla, the beautiful Jewish princess, who evidently was interested in the message of the Christians and of Paul, visiting several times. She never decided to become a Christian. Her story ends in tragedy. She is one of the two only known persons by name who died when Vesuvius, the volcano, erupted in Pompeii and Herculaneum in the year 79. The other was Pliny the Elder, the Roman soldier and admiral for the navy. Drusilla, the beautiful Jewish princess who had been attracted by Paul's message, nevertheless never became a Christian and died a tragic death. That is a story to remember. Paul will now remain in Caesarea for 2 years, and a new procurator is arriving, Festus, and his approach to Paul we will meet in the next chapter, chapter 25. Thank you for listening.